have things to say about both sides. So I'm going to try to get people to see where both sides are coming from with this particular story. It appears that TYT has fired a contributor. That contributor is Francesca Fiorettini. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. And Cenk did release a video with a long explanation about why he decided to fire her. And she also responded as well. Now, here's the thing. Nothing is permanent. And I want you guys to keep that in mind as we go through this story. But also, I want you to understand where both sides are coming from. I'm not here to say I'm on team so-and-so. That is not me. That's not this show. Okay. And I think some people want that. That's not what this is. I'm going to show you where both sides are coming from so that you guys can get hopefully a different perspective than what you may have heard already. Right. So let's get into the start of it where Cenk announces that he fired her. Listen to this.
Recently, Francesca Fiorettini asked us at TYT to take her podcast, Habituation Room, off the network. And we happily agreed to that. And today, I'm going a little further, and I'm going to take Francesca off the network entirely. So you won't see her on any of the TYT shows going forward. So I want you guys to know why I'm doing that and how this whole situation isn't really about Francesca. It's about TYT, our community, and what we stand for.
Okay, so I thought that was kind of nasty. I thought that was kind of, well, she wanted to take her show off of the TYT network, and I decided, we're just gonna go ahead and fire her completely. I thought that was kind of nasty. Like, I thought that was like, you ain't really had to, I don't know. Thought that was kind of nasty. Now, Cenk says that there are 3 rules that they have. And apparently it is those rules that led to why he decided to fire her. Again, you'll get to hear her perspective as well. So let's go ahead and jump to the 3 rules and skip over all this other stuff. Now, some people thought it was because they have a difference of agreement when it comes to the trans community. I don't know. I mean, I've seen people that have been contributors for TYT or actually, hosts for TYT have that disagreement and butt heads. Some decided to leave TYT because of that, and that's their right and their choice. But I don't think it's just that. Listen to this part here about the 3 rules that apparently they have at TYT.
So I think where the issue comes in is when things get personal. So we got 3 rules, generally speaking, on air here at TYT that are relatively bright lines. So one is, and I say relative, I'll explain that in a second. One is no lying. 2 is no threats of physical violence. And number 3 is don't denigrate personally the other hosts in the network over and over and over again. And I say relatively bright lines because it should be relatively easy to follow, but I get that people have disagreements about, hey, what's a lie? Are what they say about crime stats a lie or not? No, I'm not gonna nitpick that. And we get into heated debates from time to time, me and Ben Glebe in the past, me, Ben Mankiewicz, me, Michael Shore, etc. And I love those debates. And somebody might cross a line and say something they shouldn't have, but we usually hug it out. And so I'm not nitpicking here. What we're looking for is, hey, are we all rowing generally in the same direction, or are some of us drilling holes in the boat? And so are you doing it over and over again on purpose to try to create an issue? Or even if you're not trying to do it, you are creating an issue by constantly attacking our own. And I have applied this 2 other times, which I'll tell you about in a minute.
Pause. So did you guys hear what he said there about constantly attacking our own? So let me go ahead and talk about this in business terms, okay? You see, there's YouTube and then there's a network, a company, and a business. And I think what sometimes people just don't consider is that TYT is a business. TYT is a company, okay? They're not just on YouTube. There's a TYT channel on cable, or at least there used to be. And I had cable. TYT has a Roku channel. This isn't just a YouTube show. TYT was one of the first YouTube partners in the YouTube partner program. They're heavily on the algorithm. So it's a business. And now, why am I saying that? There is a big difference from having a YouTube show where you talk about politics like I do on the show, and having an actual business and a network, a company. And I said this years ago that when they decided to take that $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg, yeah, that money will help you and it'll help grow the company and maybe help you get some things, that other things that you wanted to get. But there's things that come with that money. When you start taking big money from investors, then it's kind of like you might have to be a little bit careful about certain things you talk about. And maybe you may have to change the way that you present information. What do I mean by that? When TYT first started, remember, it was a little bit more chill, a little bit more relaxed, right? They used to do these shows where they used to go out and like try to find the camel toe. Do everybody remember this? The camel toe shows that they used to do back in the day? Yeah. So they used to go out and like get pictures of women's, hoo-has, and they would show it on the show and like, oh, whose celebrity camel toe is this? Then later on, they got more investors. And as you saw, they became more and more like professional, more polished. The studio is nicer, all those types of things. They have an entire staff. Most of us, smaller YouTube channel, we don't have staff. Most of us don't have. I have Eric who produces in the background. If Eric's not here, Corey's here, and Corey clips the stories for the show. That's it. I don't have a staff. And that means that they also have to do payroll. That means they're also paying for, I would hope, paying for benefits. So that includes healthcare. That includes like all those things that an actual company would do. When you own a company, you are going to start to look out for what you think is best for the company, what you think is best for the business, not necessarily what you like or who you like. This is the dirty part about business. It's not always about what you like or who you like. It's about what you think will be best for the company or what the investors think will be best for the company. Don't forget they're partnered with Polymarket now. This is just some weird stuff, man. That's like a gambling site. So that money's coming from somewhere. Just wanted to say that there. And then we'll get back to this.
This all started, unfortunately, when I went on Francesca's show and we had what seemed like a normal conversation and debate about this issue until it made a turn. And this is part of the turn. Let me show you.
I'm reminded of the book by, I think his name is Michael Schneider, on tyranny. And he wrote, it's like 20 lessons from the 20th century about authoritarianism and fascism. And one of the things that has come to mind when you say, my strategy will protect us, is he has this chapter, I'm gonna bring it up, the first part of it called Do Not Obey in Advance. And he writes, most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do. In other words, you don't have to do the sort of crackdown on the left around speech because I'm going to do it for you, or you don't have to come to me.
Cracking down. Again, you're misstating it. I'm doing the exact opposite. You're cracking down by saying, Cenk, you're out of bounds. So you should stop your stupid opinion. So and because you're implicating me.
I can't believe that a guy who I used to admire and who I thought had a lot of fight is trying to scratch the back of people who absolutely would never do the same for them.
So this is Francesca here. For those who are not aware, she's the one that Cenk Uygur fired. She's actually been with TYT for a long time, probably over 10 years. So she's one of the, old school kind of, contributors there. She's been there for a long time. She's also a comedian from what I understand. Now she does have her own show called The Bituation Room. She has her own, YouTube channel, but she was also a contributor for TYT. From what I understand, that Bituation Room channel was also, I guess, affiliated with TYT, and she's demanding that, or wanted that affiliation to end, at least for that show. And then he decided to take it a step further and say, I'm just going to fire you, all together, right? So this part is tame compared to the other things that he shows. But it's obvious to me, I keep saying that TYT is a business because I do want you guys to understand something. That when Cenk Uygur is her boss. Now he gets to this part here. Listen to this.
Then that was the tip of the iceberg. She continued again and again. Here's the next one.
I do think it's sad that even though they allow people like us into the fold and the fray, they refuse to learn from us or listen to us. And I think that when you have been doing this work for so long and you still cannot grasp the idea of intersectionality, how race and gender and class all intertwine with one another, and how the fascist goal is to divide us based on these lines. I don't know like who you are. Like I don't even know if you're smart. You know what I mean? I don't even know. First of all, I don't know who your political mentors are. I don't know who you look up to. I don't know what your touchstones are. I don't know if you know your history in terms of like civil rights, women's rights, gay rights struggle in this country. I don't know anything. I call into question all of that. It sounds like you are just an opportunistic mouthpiece who wants clicks time and time again.
Okay, so again, one thing to understand, TYT is a company, it's a business, he's her boss. Now, do I think that she should be able to disagree with her boss? Absolutely. Do I think that someone who is a commentator should not be censored and they should have that freedom to say what they really feel? Abso-fucking-lutely. However, you're basically working for the person that you're criticizing. And even at that point, I don't think that criticism is as harsh, but that is your boss, right? So this is where things get kind of sticky because like I said, people see TYT and they're like, well, it's this, they're big on YouTube. Like that was the home of progressives, etc. But it is a business. It is a company. They have a Roku channel. They had a cable channel. Like, they're running a business and a company. And so the way that he may be looking at it is if he feels as though it's bad for the image of the company or whatever, although I think this is more personal, but if he thinks it's bad for the image of the company or whatever, that these discussions are being had, then he's kind of like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and, cut the cord and just get that out of the way. But the problem that comes in is that it seems like it was more personal. Not so much that she was criticizing the direction that TYT was going in, but because some of the things that she said about him personally. We go on a little bit more here.
Okay, so obviously it's getting deeply personal there. Opportunistic mouthpiece, can't grasp simple concepts, not smart. But guys, and I'm not angry. Look, people have different opinions and they want to make it personal. It is what it is, right? I'm more sad about it. I'll say something at the end about that. But to me, the attitude that is toxic, and that's what I don't want at TYT. I want to build a community that is really open to conversations. Is they refuse to learn from us. So the idea is, well, obviously I'm right and the only moral center of the universe, and I already told him that, and this guy wouldn't even learn from me.
So, and this is the other problem that I wanted to bring up, right? Some of the things that, and I haven't watched TYT in years. Like I want people to understand this. It's been years since I've watched TYT, and I'll tell you part of the reason why. It's just kind of weird to me how it went from being, like Cenk and Ana and sometimes John and even Hassan at one point, they would all be a part of it was like more like a panel, like part of that main panel, to it just being like Cenk and Ana. I felt like there should have been rotation within that spot. That's just me. Also from what I've seen is that it seems like the rhetoric that is now coming or has actually been coming for quite a bit. I warned people about it like a year ago. The rhetoric that was coming from Cenk in particular, I think it started with Ana, this whole criticism against what's called the radical left, which I would be considered radical left by his definition, is a problem. That the radical left is a problem. I take criticism, about that because number one, I don't think I'm radical, but number two, that's the same message that people said about Bernie supporters. That's the same message that MSNBC said about Bernie supporters in 2020 and 2016, and Fox News as well. They both agreed on that issue, that the Bernie supporters were radical. And now Cenk Uygur is saying that. See, it started with Ana. Ana was the one that started saying that this defund the police is radical, the crime, like these people are radical and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually, Cenk started saying it too. In fact, you go look on X right now, you can see he has a post that says that the radical leftists are a problem and da-da-da. How is that any different from the same type of rhetoric that came from corporate media against those of us who voted for Bernie? That's not any different. That's what I was saying before about people who tend to be these business owners, especially if they're trying to grow a business, is not uncommon for them to move further to the right. And that's what I'm trying to wake people up to understand. They're going to do what's best for the company. They're going to do what's best for the business. And if they see that, and this could be what is happening, if they see that the progressivism, the progressive movement, like that type of thing, and not entertaining with MAGA in some way, shape, or form is problematic for the company as a business, then as a business owner, he's going to make adjustments. That's the difference between doing this for fun and doing this as like a side project and actually having a network that is a company. And I'm a part of, obviously you guys know I'm a part of RBN, but RBN, like there's 5 of us, like we don't make much like over there at RBN, right? And we don't have a boss. Like that's the difference. Like we're all like kind of, together. Now she goes on to say something else that I want to show you as well here. Let's bring this up.
This is now another show. Watch.
So Cenk's line up until this point has been, no, it's at the collegiate level and above. I think once you get to the college level and above, that's when it's bad. So he would be on board with what the NCAA said recently. But you're so dumb. You're so dumb. I don't even know how to explain this to you anymore. Unless, this is the other option, unless you also are a transphobe. You know what I'm saying? Unless you also are kind of a misogynist.
Because if you disagree with Francesca or anyone on that part of the spectrum, well, you must be a misogynist. You must be collaborating with the fascists, and obviously you must be unintelligent.
But to be fair, there were, if we go back, remember, there were those messages from those statements from Cenk Uygur years ago that was released that showed him making some misogynistic comments from years ago. Now, this is a long time ago. It's not like it's a new thing. And from what I remember, he apologized for that. This is when he was a part of Justice Democrats. And if I remember correctly, I believe that's why he walked away from Justice Democrats. There was a call for him to resign because that was released, right? So he used to be conservative like back in the day or whatever. And he was saying some things. That's how he felt at that point in time, I guess. And then people changed or whatever. Anyway, look, the point is this. And I mean, for her to say that, you do kind of have the history of that. Like, that's the thing. It's not like there's nothing she can point to and say that you made these comments. So there's that point as well. Now, it goes on a little bit further.
If I had called her dumb, I wonder what her reaction would have been. My guess is nuclear. But I didn't call her that because we have a disagreement. We have a political disagreement. You don't need to make it personal. Not done yet. One last one.
What has it got you? What did it get you? When you go and share a stage with Dr. Phil, what did it get you? Nothing. You know why? Because you look like a bitch. You know what I'm saying? You look like a bitch. That's what it is. Like, that's just what it comes down to. You don't look like a fighter. You don't look smart. You look like a bitch. That's just the reality. I've tried to tell it to you nicely. I've tried to tell it to you cordially. I've tried to tell it to you on your show, on my show, on every show. And so either you A, are a bitch, or B, you actually agree with the right. And I'm starting to think, in fact, I do think it's the latter.
Okay, so again, if I had called her that would have been a different situation, right? But look, guys, also on the policy or the strategy, when you go talk to the right wingers, first we did that, and I mainly did that, and there was a lot of blowback saying, don't ever talk to the right wing, but they won the popular vote. How are we gonna win back the voters if we never talk to them?
I don't think a big part of it was just because he talked to people on the right. I think a big part of it was because you went and talked to Charlie Kirk and you didn't push back. Right. So I think that's a big part of it. We're not going to get into all that. I've gone over that before. Now, she did respond. It's so funny. The chat is hilarious right now. Oh, Jamal Thomas is here. What's up? Jamal Thomas said, fire her ass. Yeah, this is the thing. Like, I think I hope I explained things from how a business perspective, from how Cenk probably would look at it, as like, I'm your boss and that's how you're talking about me, right? That type of thing. And it's a company, it's a business, etc. There could be this whole thing is like, oh, this isn't good for business, like that type of thing, right? So that's his perspective. Now let's get her perspective, because she did respond. Listen to this.
Brief. Cenk Uygur, the head of TYT, recently hath forboden me from appearing on any TYT shows because, in part, I said that him capitulating to right-wing framing on many issues meant he was, quote, acting like a bitch. And the truth is, he was, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But first, some backstory. So I have been a contractor at TYT for 10 years now, appearing on all of the shows as a fill-in host, as a guest host during election coverage, on the TYT main show, on the Damage Report, and on Indisputable, along with a lot of other shows. I have always hopped on at the last minute, always helped out in a pinch. I guest host last minute, and yes, I was paid. And if you're watching this and you are a TYT contributor and you are not getting paid, stop going on TYT until you do. I've never been a full-time employee, never got healthcare, never got maternity leave when I had my child. But back in 2018, I was hired for a 6-month contract to pilot a show for $3,000 a month. Then, however, their funding bottomed out and I was let go. And they broke their contract. My reps at the time thought I should sue to get the full 6 months of payment and work that I was owed, but I didn't, because I told them that TYT was good people. And
yep. So here, take this for a thing here. Okay. So first of all, the good people comment, right? Like, she didn't do what she was advised to do because she's like, no, they're good people. You kind of look at it this way. They're giving you a chance, an opportunity, that type of thing. But at the end of the day, it is business. It really is. And like, I think letting them get away with that could have led to other things. But don't forget, like we talked about this before about the TYT, the union busting. We talked about that before, right? Obviously, there have been a number of people that have worked with the show, been a contributor, or they were an affiliate of TYT that had left and have said some things about, like, maybe there was monetary issues, according to them, that they weren't fairly compensated. That's another thing, right? Like, come on, you guys are making a lot of money there at TYT, I would think, when you have over 6 million subscribers and you have a cable channel and you have Roku as well. You're making a lot. I get it. They got the staff, so they probably have a lot of expenses as well. But when you're running on like this platform of, we got to look out for working people and we got to support progressive policies, but at the same time, you're not willing to really look out for the working people that are working with you. I don't know what to say. It's just like, yeah, like a lot of these things came out. But to Jamal's point, which I think this is a good point. So when did she start thinking this? How many paychecks did she take before she realized it? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Me personally, you guys know how I feel about workers. I don't agree with people losing their job. At the same time, that is her boss. Like, like if I would have said my boss is acting like a bitch, I would have lost my job. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I would have lost my job. But again, I think the environment that they had at TYT kind of made it acceptable, at least back in the day, to just kind of be real and raw with each other. And apparently that seemed to have changed.
And I wanted to maintain my relationship, and I did. That is until things started to turn for TYT politically. And this started happening around the pandemic. Around the pandemic, Ana Kasparian seemed to become focused on the issue of homelessness, especially in a city that I used to call home, which is San Francisco. She had an objectively scary experience with an unhoused person, and in fact, I went back to see when she told her audience about this. And I do remember the day that Ana told the story on air. In fact, I was also on after she told that story, but I didn't hear it at the time. It was within an interview that she was doing with an author by the name of Michael Shellenberger, who had written the book San Francisco, Why Progressives Are Ruining Cities. Instead of focusing on housing market prices, on how homelessness often leads to things like addiction and mental illness, Shellenberger focuses on Democrats who thinks go too easy on the unhoused. I remember that I jumped onto the show right after he got off, after that interview, and the TYT audience was really pissed because they felt like the framing and the platforming of someone like Shellenberger was a disservice to the issue of homelessness, mental illness, and addiction. Ana apparently took that as the chat downplaying what happened to her rather than how the issues were presented. She's since gone on right-wing shows like Glenn Beck, Piers Morgan, and Jillian Michaels, among others, to retell this story and use it as rationale for why she feels the left left her, that maybe she's never been left, why she's politically homeless, or, politically unhoused.
So now the conversation switches to Ana Kasparian, which is interesting because it sounds like, according to Cenk's statement, it sounds like he was the one that fired her, not Ana. So it's interesting that the conversation is switching to her. And I'm just going to say this again, as I said before, like, look, nothing is permanent. Nothing. We could be here today, gone tomorrow. Nothing is permanent, right? This is one thing I will say is this. A lot of progressive YouTube came from TYT. I would say probably most of it. And it had been that way for quite some time, or they already had their own show and they became an affiliate of TYT. A lot of people may not remember, but even David Pakman at one point was an affiliate of TYT. Like, a lot of people went through TYT to kind of get their start. And I was never one of those people. And I remember when I first started the show in 2021, I remember receiving messages from people that were telling me that you need to get on TYT in order to grow. You're not going to get anywhere unless you're with TYT. And I didn't believe it. And I'm glad I didn't believe it. I didn't want to do that anyway. And here's why. When you are working for a network that is also a company, you're an employee. Like, whether you're contract, whether you're permanent, you're an employee. And that means that you have a boss, like you are working for Cenk Uygur or you are working for Ana Kasparian. You're working for one of them, somebody over there, right? And that may mean that there may come a time when they can get rid of your ass. Media is fickle. Media is one of these places, you talk about here today, gone tomorrow, here today, gone tonight. Media is fickle. They'll keep you, they'll tell you you're doing a good job, and then when you least expect it, you're out of here. You never know. Because it's a business. Again, at the end of the day, that's an actual company. So I look back on those things and I'm like, I'm glad. Like, I didn't believe that. When people said that, I'm so glad I didn't fall for that and didn't believe it. And I continued to do what I was doing. And it's really interesting because I was fortunate and I was lucky that people were willing to platform me. I was lucky that when Bree was a co-host on Rising, she continued to bring me on a lot. I went on to Rising a lot. And that really got me out there to a lot of people. I'm fortunate that happened. Otherwise, I don't know. I really don't know. That's where a lot of you found me, from that. So I think that what is being learned is I've watched so many people get fired in media over the past couple of years. Bree got fired from Rising because of Israel. Katie Halper got fired from Rising because of Israel. Francesca apparently got fired from TYT because of the personal attacks towards Cenk. That's Cenk Uger's word, is why he did what he did. But I've seen this as like a cycle type of thing. And I kind of just sit back sometimes and I'm like, I'm glad I wasn't like in that position. Now, again, she does have her own channel. She'll probably grow more now that this has happened. She's probably going to get like a couple thousand, maybe 10,000 subs because this has happened. That's how this whole cycle works. But I think the lesson that should be learned here, guys, is that always have your own shit. Always have your own shit. Or always have something on the side. Even when I worked in higher ed, one of my coworkers told me this. She used to be a career coach. She told me one time, she said, let me tell you something. The little trick is, the thing is, you don't know when any of these people in here, any of these deans, these directors are going to say they don't need you anymore. We're cutting costs. You got to go. So you always have to have something on the side. She gave me that tip years ago. And I know it may sound like, oh, well, of course, Sabs, everybody knows that. No, everybody don't know that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You might think you got this job and you're doing pretty well and they're giving you great reviews or whatever, but you don't know what's going to happen. When the pandemic came, a lot of people started getting laid off. And sometimes it comes down to a fact of people don't really give a damn how great you do in this job. When it's time to make cuts, sometimes they just go right down the list and start making cuts. So luckily for her, she does have her YouTube channel. I can't, like when Bree was fired from Rising, Bree still had Bad Faith Podcast. When they fired Katie, Katie still had the Katie Halper Show. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's not the case. A lot of times when people fire, they don't have anything else to fall back on. So I hope the lesson that I send to everybody out here today is, again, just make sure you always have your own shit. I don't care who you go work for. I don't care who you become buds with. I don't care, because people will turn on you. I've seen it over in time. I'm old enough. I'm not old, but I'm old enough to have seen it happen multiple times. Always have your own shit. And especially in independent media, I have watched people behind the scenes. I've watched people turn. I hate you. I love you. I hate you. I love you. F this person. You're growing faster than me. I'm going to start talking shit about you now. Like, especially in independent media, I don't trust most of these hoes. Okay. Most of them. And I don't know any of these people. I've never met Cenk. I've never met Francesca. I've never interviewed any of these people. I really do not know them in that way, shape, or form. There's a lot. I feel like there's a split. I feel like there is like white left commentators. And I feel like then there's like black left commentators who may at one point have been a part of that bubble, but we have kind of moved over here a little bit. Like we've kind of, because of some of the things that we noticed that Francesca also mentions, which is that they didn't really want to talk about some of the issues that were directly impacting us. They didn't really want to talk about some of the issues that were directly impacting Black people. They didn't really want to get into that. They didn't really want to get into reparations, which is a debt that's owed. They didn't want to get into the fact that we will have zero net wealth by 2050. That's Black people. They didn't want to get into that. Now, why didn't they want to get into that? Because a lot of that came from the Bernie movement. The whole message was just focus on class. And while I support all those universal policies, the moment I start bringing this up, the real issues that impact the Black community, all of a sudden that white left side would start to smear me as your right wing. And this is why you don't see a lot of us moving in these spaces. Like, this is why. For those of you, if you're new, if you're a newbie to this channel and you're just your first time watching me, this is why you don't see a lot of us in those spaces anymore. This is exactly why. Because the moment you want to focus on and center on things that affect your community, it's a problem. But as long as you out there lifting up everybody else's community, they're totally fine with that. These people will have you seriously in a pit, in a hole, not realizing what's happening to the Black community. They really will. They don't talk about this shit. These are the same people that stopped talking about police brutality after George Floyd. They talked about George Floyd and that was it. All those other police brutality stories, they pretend like the shit don't even happen. Oh, let the Black person on TYT cover that story. This is why I don't get this is why I'm not in those spaces this is why, because I see what they do. And if you were here and you behind the scenes, you would see it too. You see what they do. You see how they pretend like the Black people aren't even here. And then it's like, they'll get that one token that they need. And it's like, okay, you focus on all the Black stuff. Let's go on a little bit more.
Since then, she's gone on to cover critical stories from a right-wing framing, like the alleged takeovers of buildings by Venezuelan gangs in Aurora, Colorado, like the mentally ill, undocumented man in Los Angeles, who was found lighting fires, but who was not responsible for the wildfires themselves in January. Throwing progressive mayors like Brandon Johnson of Chicago under the bus because he listens to teachers too much. Anna's actually really skilled at what she does, so the laziness with which she treats these stories really just stands out all the more.
Here's another example. If you talk to the Black community in Chicago, ask them how they feel about Brandon Johnson. Did I just prove my point to you guys or what? You see what I mean? His approval rating is horrible. His approval rating is horrible. And that's with the Black community.
Give you some backstory, though, of Anna and my friendship. We've never been close, despite a hike, a dinner, and the time that she generously gave me a gift for my new baby, and then explained to me that she was going to debate Ben Shapiro because, in her words, she, quote, felt she could win over his audience. Two moments with Anna stand out for me in terms of how I've always treated her. In 2016, I was working with AJ Plus, and we were at the RNC. I had just started going on TYT a little bit and meeting everyone. And TYT was there, and Anna was there, and she was frustrated because she hadn't been booked on many appearances on camera, and instead a panel of men mostly clogged up the day. I stood next to her and told her how annoying that was, and just tried to build her up in solidarity. Then in 2019, we went out to lunch in Los Angeles at an awesome spot that she knew of. And Anna confided to me that she was frustrated about leadership at TYT. How she wasn't involved in day-to-day decision-making, and how Cenk viewed her more as a kid sister rather than a co-equal partner. And at the time, she wanted to branch out on her own and do videos on a new channel. I implored her at that moment to stay. I said that it's always women that tend to walk away from organizations, even when they've helped build them up to the point that they're at.
And it's always women that will stab other women's ass in the back. Let me add that part to it. But this, I think her video, what I notice is a lot of focus on Anna and not so much on Cenk Uygur. And Cenk Uygur is the one that decided to ultimately fire her. And I'm going to say this again. I think from her perspective, she kind of probably saw it as though as a commentator, she should be able to not be censored and she should have that type of freedom. To that, I agree. I think from Cenk's perspective, he's kind of like, I'm your boss. This is my business. This is my company. And you're going around and you're making personal attacks about me. That's bad for business. That I totally also understand. But when you put the two together, ultimately what you have is that you end up in this situation when the people who are working for the company don't own a piece of the company. If TYT were a worker co-op, for example, this situation probably could have been completely avoided. Or if Francesca were fired, she would have left with the portion, of her earnings. She would still have some ownership in the company, but it's not a worker cooperative. And this is why I do push for that. This is the thing about when you work for someone else, they always have the upper hand. And everybody may be buddy and chummy with each other after work, and all that kind of stuff. And it sounds like they were kind of cool with each other, like maybe even, friendly, not just, coworkers and stuff. But people will stab you in the back, especially if it gets in the way of their career goals. People have no problem doing that. I told you guys 9 times out of 10, most people who stab other women in the back in the workplace are other women. People may not want to say it out loud, but it's true. I trust a dude in the workplace before I would trust a chick. Just saying, especially if you're competing for a top position and let's say they're looking to maybe have a female in that position and, both of you competing for that, get ready. But it's a company, you guys. TYT is a company. And so that's something people need to keep in mind. I hear people talking about this, and the way that they're talking about it is like, oh my God, what's happening to them? They're doing this, they're doing that, da da da. It's a business first. So when people are like, it's the home of the progressives, no, it was a business first. It was a company first. And since he's the business owner, he's going to do what he feels is best for that company. I don't even know how long have I been talking about this. My whole thing is this could have been fixed if TYT was a worker co-op. Let this really be a lesson. Like I'm telling you guys, man, if TYT was a worker co-op, she would still have a share in the company. But what is wrong? Some men stab some other men in the back too. Yeah, that's true. That is true. But I think people expected me to be on one side or the other. I understand where both sides are coming from, but also at the end of the day, that is your boss. So they can fire you with or without. In Massachusetts, I know when I worked at Boston University, they told us this during orientation. At Boston University, they made it very clear to you that you can be fired from Boston University without reason. They don't have to give a reason why they fire you. Something to think about, right? Now, the solution to all that, again, like I said, is worker cooperatives. That's what I say. And I know some people are really into unionizing. Union's great too, but apparently TYT has shut that down at one point. That's why I say worker co-ops. That's really the way to go, in my opinion. But she'll be fine. She'll probably gain like 10,000, 15,000 subs because this happened. That's the pattern I've seen over the years. But yeah, I don't know, dude. I don't know. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.